Have we, guitarists, lost our grip? The complaint for modern metal records sounding the same is real. I myself was in that camp 5 years ago, before I aimed to actually get that tone. And I gotta say that getting to that modern tone is much more difficult than you may think. And it is also an absolute must for modern riffs to sit in the right sonic pocket, because otherwise they sound flabby and harsh and fall out of the mix, not representing the right feel for your record. Yet still, there is a range of tones that you can explore within that pocket, and not many of you do that. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you today. The reason for this outcome, however, is not a copycat approach. The modern plugin workflow, I believe, has impacted our ability to dial in sounds. Once we find the settings that work well, all within the digital domain, without twisting the real knobs at all, and with endless hours of twisting the digital knobs and tweaking the digital caps, all ones and zeros, we settle with it. Hell, sometimes we just open up some presets and call it a day. Am I calling us, modern guitarists, lazy? Hell no, because I myself switched from primarily working with my real amp over there to doing the plugin thing. And I can absolutely see how that becomes a workflow, psychological issue. The difference in the world of vast choices, endless Ampsims and endless cab IRs. However, the guitar tone is what makes or breaks your record, because metal is 80% about guitar tones. That's exactly what differentiates your record from another metal band. That's what puts spotlight onto your riffs. That's how your listeners connect with your message. So, in this next chapter, I'm going to showcase an interesting test for you. This is an excerpt from my guitar course, which is almost ready to be launched. And that's coming out soon. And I will run 5 different Ampsims into the very same cab IR. And we'll draw conclusions about how these Ampsims actually impact the tone of your guitar, and whether the fancy UI and different brands make much of a difference, and which kind of a difference. Hey, I'm Dr. Mike Trubetskov, and I'm here to bring valuable information on recording, producing and mixing metal. So mate, please like and subscribe to not miss out valuable information. I'm also offering 20% off my guitar course once it's launched, and this will happen in a month or so. Even more so, I will send you a summary on dialing in the best tones, whether it is an Ampsim or an amp, in a PDF format. So, what you waiting for? Sign up for this. Let's go! We're looking at a cover of Make Them Suffer, Hollow Out Heart. We only use the same cab here, which is the Forward Audio Modern Metal Pack. So, essentially the principle here is that we only change one part of the equation and not the multiples of it. We only change the amp itself and the circuitry behind the distortion modeling, but not the cab modeling. And we can see how much of an imprint the actual Ampsim have on the tone. Let's see. So first one, gonna look at the Death Western by Purified Audio, which is a 153 emulation, I believe, cab off, and this sounds like this now. Now the next one is Bogren Digital Amp Knob. Next one, Archetype Pliny. Here's the freeware, Amped Roots, free Ampsim. Cool. Next up is the neural amp modeler. And the model that I'm using here is my custom audio amplifiers, the Black Amp. I'll provide it for you for free as well. Okay, and finally we're looking at modern music solutions, Clairvoyant. This was an example and I didn't draw any conclusions as of yet. I'm doing it with you right now here. So here are my thoughts. When I was constructing this test, when I was able to find the right IR and process it properly, the difference became less and less obvious. What I'm hearing now is that the gain structure across these Ampsims is different. They respond differently dynamically to the material. Some sound more compressed and saturated, and therefore more contained and more suitable for this genre. Others, like the amp knob, in this case, sound a bit more flabby. And this is more than fair, because some of those Ampsims have an overdrive circuitry built in with a mix knob, and the amp knob doesn't. At the same time, they do provide a different frequency response. Some of those Ampsims seem to sit in the mix a bit better, having less mid-range, more low end or tighter low end, and more balanced top end. So the character and the grit of the top end, particularly in the mid-range, is what the Ampsim dictates in your case. And this is really important, because without the right distortion circuit, you cannot achieve the proper top end and mid-range response. The example is sometimes the Ampsim generates too much distortion and it is too harsh, it is not smooth, it is not distributed equally on the spectrum of your top end, for instance. And that sounds more harsh. And when you are operating with this to begin with, it is very difficult to get rid of that in the mix. You can use EQ and dynamic EQ suppressors to tame that annoying top end down, but ultimately you need to start with the right distortion circuit for your Ampsim to sit right in the mix. This is one part of it. The second part of it is that under the same treatment conditions, those Ampsims do not differ as vastly in character as you would have thought. And in fact, the freeware, the 5150 ml sound amped roots, sounds just fine. Maybe the gain structure of that Ampsim is a little bit off and it is a little bit too compressed and not as dynamic, but otherwise, the shape of the tone of the Ampsim going to the exact chain with the exact cab IR is not sounding that different. So you may draw your conclusions based on that. And you can see that the Ampsim, in my opinion, would form maybe up to 40% of your tone at best, and the rest is reliant on your IR and the processing that follows after it. So what does this test provide us with in terms of information on how you can dial in unique tones that still sit well within the modern metal territory? I guess my conclusion is that you don't have to spend the main focus on the Ampsim. You don't have to follow the market as much on the new and shiny Ampsims that are there. And in fact, you would be just fine getting your neural amp modeler or even amp truths or your favorite Gajira and sticking to that. What would actually change the sound and the perception of the riff is mainly the cab, number one, and secondly, how you actually approach the Ampsim, how you dial in the tone. If you want to use the ultra-modern approach and shape the DI, how are you pushing the DI? What are you doing for the DI to have more transient response, whether you are compressing it, whether you're using some transient designers, or maybe you're clipping the DI, or maybe you're EQing the DI, and what kind of IRs are you using? How are you dialing these in? And more so, whether you are layering this Ampsim with something else to thicken up your image and create a fuller representation of your tone. So, even though this video is not comprehensive guide on how to get unique tones that still work in the modern metal territory, I hope that this gives you some pointers onto where to look and where to focus your attention so that you get the 80-20 of your modern metal guitar tone right. I'm Dr. Trubetskov. I'm really grateful that you watched this video. Thank you so much, and until next time, take care, cheers.